AI is this really transformational technology that can make a massive difference to the workplace, at home, in science, education. And so for me, like, my hope is that the future of work and AI and everything is collaborative, where AI and humans are working together to sort of push humanity forward. I'm a big fan of the future where sort of like we're slaves to AI and all that good stuff.
Hi, I'm Boaz, founder and CEO of Augmented AI, and I'm excited that you're tuning into the Shift AI podcast, a show that explores what it takes to thrive and adapt to the changing workplace in the digital age of remote work and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to have Mandela Patrick as our guest. Mandela is the CEO of Vybe, an innovative app that simplifies and expands creative expression. He's also a Rhodes Scholar and a Harvard and ex-Meta AI alum. If you're someone interested in creative technology and how AI can transform digital expression, you are not going to want to miss this episode. We also want to send out a special thank you to Augmented AI for sponsoring this episode. This is going to be a great show, and we're super excited to talk to Mandela today. We can't wait to learn more from him. Let's get to it. Mandela, thank you for joining the Shift AI podcast. It's great to have you today.
Thanks for having me.
So like all Shift AI shows, I'm going to start by just introducing you by reading back your experience, which is amazing. And then you can kind of check in and say, yeah, I got it right or I didn't get it right. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Okay. So education, went to Harvard University, and then from Harvard went to Oxford. You've been in the ML and AI space since that time. You've been a software engineer as an intern. You were at Meta as a visiting AI researcher. You did some artificial intelligence consulting, and then you worked for Pinata Farms, where you were both a growth lead and a machine learning researcher. And now you're the CEO of Optimatic, which makes a product called Optics, which I'm excited to hear about. And where are you from originally, Mandela?
Originally from a small island in the Caribbean called Trinidad and Tobago.
Trinidad and Tobago. So can you talk a little bit about the journey from Trinidad all the way to Harvard, and then from Harvard into the CEO position that you've had?
Yeah, no, definitely. So grew up in the Caribbean and got really interested in math and computer science in high school. That led me down a path of programming and taking a bunch of math and science classes throughout high school. And always wanted to sort of study in the United States. I think I was always fascinated by being able to both play sports and academics. And so I actually played varsity squash at Harvard as well. And that was sort of like the big attraction there. And so, yeah, as in studied really hard. There's, as a sort of like an immigrant, you have no other choice than to just work your butt off. And yeah, had some really amazing mentors, obviously my parents. And yeah, that took me to Harvard when I was 18, continued on the path of computer science and got really interested in machine learning my junior year after taking a machine learning and AI class with Alexander Rush, and who's like one of the top NLP researchers in the field. And yeah, got an internship at Instagram working in that space. And I was like, I want to do more of this stuff. And so applied for a Rhodes Scholarship my senior year to pursue graduate studies at Oxford. I was fortunate enough to be a winner of the Rhodes Scholarship, and then did a PhD in AI, and then sort of really wanted to sort of take a look at the cutting edge research I was working on and actually put it into people's hands. And so that led me down a path of working at a startup called Pinata Farms before this, and then sort of eventually leaving and starting my own with one of my really good friends and also PhD students at Oxford.
Did you play squash at Oxford too? And have you been playing squash all your life?
Yeah, no, so I've been playing squash since I was maybe 7, 8 years old. I was like the captain of the Trinidad junior squash team, have represented Trinidad at the Commonwealth Games, played on the varsity squash team at Harvard, and then I played also on the blues varsity team at Oxford. And so yeah, I've been playing squash my entire life. It's been a big part of like my identity and my journey so far.
That's awesome. And at Oxford, how long ago did you finish up your studies at Oxford?
Wow, it's been a little over 2 years. And so yeah, spent close to about a year and a half or 2 at Pinata, and then been working on Optimatic for the last like 7, 8 months.
When we met in Los Angeles, I was interested to hear about your work at Pinata, the growth work that you did there that was kind of tied to machine learning that led to your ideas, which we'll talk about in regards to Optimatics. Can you talk a little bit about how you think about machine learning in the context of growth marketing? I thought that was really interesting.
It's funny because I think I get a lot of questions about how did you end up in a growth lead and marketing role at a startup, even though you just did a PhD in AI. And when you think about it at a fundamental level, both growth as well as machine learning and optimization problems, you have different hyperparameters and parameters that you can tune, and those have impacts on different output metrics that you're trying to optimize. With machine learning, you're optimizing the parameters of a model to solve some sort of machine learning problem. With growth, you're trying to optimize usually like some funnel or some key product metric that drives like value for the business. And so it's a very similar thinking in terms of it's very experimental, very rigorous scientific thinking. And then I think machine learning and growth kind of intersect, because if you think about at a fundamental level what growth is, it's connecting people, understanding the value of your product and connecting as many users to that value as quickly and as frequently as possible. And usually, depending on the product, a lot of connecting, like what is valuable to me might be different or might have a different value to you. And a lot of that is a matching problem. And so sort of like understanding what value different users want out of your product and being able to sort of detect and sort of provide that value. And so particularly in a space like social and media, a lot of that is content. Like, can you match the right people with the right content, which is a machine learning problem. That's like one of the biggest drivers of growth or retention. If it's like, for example, let's take another example. Let's say it's like you're a B2B SaaS business, sort of like really understanding what workflows are the most like sticky, connecting the right users through those workflows. And so a lot of it is fundamentally like a machine learning problem at the end of the day.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by the way that your education happened in Trinidad. And I'm wondering about your family. Was your family into technology? Were they into business? Were they into medicine? What was your family life like? Did you guys talk about technology at the dinner table? Was it part of your early life?
My dad is an engineer, petroleum engineer back home in Trinidad. And so definitely science and more broadly technology has been a big part of my life. I think specifically computer science and programming and more the entrepreneurial side. I think it's sort of I kind of like nurtured a little bit because I didn't grow up in like a very well-off family. And so my dad was always a person who valued being very conscientious with money. So like you'd only spend never like to really spend on like massive sort of like luxuries or anything he didn't really consider like essential. And so if I wanted like a particular computer game or I wanted this game console, I have to find the money somehow. And so I kind of did the entrepreneurship to just get side money to basically get all of these different more wants rather than needs. And so I would jailbreak people's phones back in the day to get money to buy all of these different things I wanted. I did like computer repairs and I would burn different CDs of games. I would torrent a bunch of stuff. All of these are slightly on the more illegal side, to be honest, but you kind of do whatever it takes to get money when you were younger.
Is that your first experience of getting money for work? Was that really the first time that you got paid for doing a job? Were those early side hustles?
Yeah, but I think what was interesting, and I think even how I feel right now, is that I don't view entrepreneurship as a job. And so I think I view a job as like working for someone else. And so I wouldn't consider like that was my first job. It was the first time I earned money in a more entrepreneurial setting. But yeah, I would consider like my first job like an intern at Facebook or one of these tech companies. But yeah.
But the entrepreneurial stuff was the first time you actually got paid for the work.
Exactly. And I was also interested in music a lot growing up. I would play a lot of piano. And so I would create these like soundtracks and melodies on the piano, like different Christmas songs, and like sell them around Christmas time to people in the neighborhood. And so I had this like maybe like this entrepreneurial spirit from since I was very young, and mostly because of kind of like necessity just to survive in some sense.
Yeah, I love it. Well, it leads us to kind of talk about what you're doing now, because I am really excited about the project that you're working on now. It's really a product of the work that and the thoughts that you had at Meta that led to the growth and lead growth work that you were doing. But now is a very consumer AI focused business, which I find interesting. Will you explain what you're doing, what you're excited about it, and what's bringing you energy around it?
Yeah, no. So we're building this app called Optics, and the whole thesis behind it is that when you think about every new technology, it unlocks sort of like a new form of storytelling. And that has been the case since the beginning of times. When you think about cave paintings and then the advent of digital photography, you had the printing press, and then in more recent time, when you think about the biggest social media platforms, they've essentially democratized the types and who can tell what stories, whether that's like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. And so for us, what we're excited about is we think the best stories are actually not based in reality. When you think about the advent of like Hollywood and some of these, and the media and entertainment world, a lot of the best stories are actually based in fiction or actually not based in reality. But a lot of our particularly visual storytelling platforms, the Instagrams, the Snaps of the world, the camera is the main interface of creation. And so reality is sort of the main canvas on which stories are told. But I think we're excited about how do you open up the canvas and allow people to tell any story that they want, particularly those that are not actually grounded in reality. And yeah, that's kind of what we're building with Optics.
Describe to the audience what it looks like on their phones. When you showed me the demo and talked to me about how I could visually replace different parts of the image with AI driven content and then share that like I would share, any kind of story on Instagram or TikTok. Can you walk the audience through what it's like to be using the app and why it's gotten so much traction with young people?
Yeah, no. So kind of the beauty of any sort of UGC platform is how do you drive creation and increase the creation rate? And the one way to increase the creation rate is essentially to lower the creation barrier. And one way to lower the creation barrier is making it super easy for people not to start creating content from scratch. And so what is really, I think, exciting about what we're building is we allow people to take existing pieces of content and then easily remix it, either by, for example, changing the character or the person or the character of the story, whether that's like the caption or the prose or the background or different parts of the image. And so I think parts of what you're hinting at is we've made it super easy to take existing pieces of content. So you're not starting from a blank canvas and then sort of make that piece of content in some sense modular, where you can change different sort of parts to sort of customize it to tell the story that you want and the message that you want.
Yeah, amazing. Before we go further with the interview, I want to take a moment to tell you about one of our podcast sponsors, Augmented AI, and how they are transforming businesses with Gen AI solutions. Augmented AI specializes in helping organizations uncover and address internal workflow challenges that Gen AI can solve. Their comprehensive process starts by identifying and prioritizing business problems, and then assessing each based on value, effort, and risk. Once a problem is selected, the Augmented AI team tests and validates the solution to ensure that it works. Only after this thorough validation do they draft technical requirements, which serve as a blueprint for building and deploying the solutions. The real beauty of partnering with Augmented AI is that they don't just stop at strategy and feasibility studies. They actually stand up the solutions and manage them for you so you can focus on what you do best. If you're interested in experiencing this innovative approach to deploying Gen AI solutions, visit simplyaugmented.ai and click on the Learn More button. That's simplyaugmented.ai. Now back to the episode. So as you start looking at the metrics on this and you start to see how people are using this, are there things that are coming up for you that are different than the normal usage patterns that you see in the younger demographic as it relates to social media sharing and UGC? Yeah,
one of the most interesting things we're seeing is that people are sort of kind of the tagline of the app right now is called Remix Your Reality. And that is, I think it captures a lot of what we're trying to do, which is we're not trying to replace reality. We just think like, how can we give people the tools and a platform that allows them to express themselves and portray a reality that they want. So we're seeing a lot of people sort of curating a reality very much aligned to their interest and their aesthetics. And so particularly for women, we're seeing a lot of curation around their profile being very tied to like their fashion interests or like the like celebrities that they follow. And while on the male side, we're seeing a lot of people curating their profiles around their favorite gaming characters, anime characters, your favorite sports and favorite athletes. And so I think we're seeing this like really interesting bifurcation based on gender, which is fascinating. And it's usually tied to sort of like what interests or fandoms that they're excited and they're excited by.
That's really cool. Are you able to talk about where you are in the funding cycle and what you see for the future? What are your kind of dreams and goals for this consumer application?
Yeah. So we've raised a seed round a few months ago. And the vision is that we build a platform that allows people to express themselves in a way that they feel comfortable and excited by. I think a lot of existing social media sort of forces people into a box or like a certain way of expression. And I think what we're excited by is a platform that opens up and breaks free of a lot of those constraints and allows people to really express themselves in a way that is really authentic to them. Because I think part of that is the power of AI, whereas I think as much as you want to express different parts of who you are and your interests, because of either like reality or the tools that you have access to, like you can't really do that. And I think we're really excited by it. Like if you give people the right tools, the platform and space to really sort of tell their story and who they want to be or what they're interested in, I think you have like an actually really interesting place.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about where we've come in machine learning and AI, and being a young PhD in machine learning at Oxford, and then all the work that you did in AI at Harvard. Are you surprised at the excitement and where we're at a year after OpenAI releases ChatGPT? I mean, it must be bizarre for you, exciting, for you, but compared with most people that were seeing GPT for the first time, you've been steeped in this technology for a really long time. What are your feelings around AI right now, where we happen to be in time?
Yeah, definitely could not have predicted that we'd have been here this quickly. I remember that I was working as a consultant for this VC fund in the UK. This was in 2020. So like maybe a few months or like a year before GPT-3 was released in 2021. When I was doing like a thematic piece around generative AI, basically generative AI and generative AI startups. And so I was looking at companies like Replica, Synthesia, Descript, who were like very early on to this wave of generative AI. But that wasn't even the term I think that was being used to describe those companies there. I think it was a lot of just like, very much like a thematic piece on just like GANs and a bunch of just like generative media. Yeah, it was crazy that like, I've been trying to work in this, like in 2020, I did a really fun project around like being able to superimpose yourself into different Met Gala costumes during the pandemic. And so I've been kind of on the edges or like a little bit pre the hype of a lot of this stuff in the generative AI space. And I remember generating some of these images or coming up with these products, and the quality definitely wasn't there like 3 years ago. Like my co-founder he did his PhD in GANs and a bunch of image generation stuff. And he's also been mind blown by just how quickly we've been able to get to this sort of like tipping point. And so it's definitely exciting because I think I like to work on problems and products where you're taking what's cutting edge and putting it into people's hands. And so you understand, you obviously understand the research, but most of your effort is spending, how do you build this really amazing experience that enriches people's lives, allows them to do stuff that wasn't really possible before. And so we get to focus on those types of problems instead of like core research problems, which I think is exciting. But I think with that, it's like, I think you have a lot of this, just like a lot of people are obviously very excited about this space. A lot of people are entering the space in different points. And I think I get a question a lot around sort of when the space is so hyped, like does that like annoy you, or does that like does that make it harder to raise, etc.? But I actually think that like I have this comment that it's easier to actually stand out in a crowd when you're sort of doing something different or differentiated. And so, yeah, I think for me, it feels like I'm in the right place at the right time and excited to be building.
I definitely think you're in the right place at the right time. This episode is going to release a little later, but we're recording on the day that Google announces Gemini. So they just announced Gemini this morning, and you know that the AI wars have begun. So we're going to see a lot more interest and activity, and you are definitely in the right place for sure. And now, before we dive deeper, I want to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about one of our podcast partners. As a listener of this show, I know you're trying to stay on top of all things AI and tech, which is why you have to check out the amazing GeekWire podcast. Produced by GeekWire and hosted by Todd Bishop. It's a treasure of insights featuring industry leaders and the latest tech trends that are shaping our world, and the perfect companion podcast to Shift AI. GeekWire podcast is where technology meets curiosity and covers the world of technology, startups, and geek culture. Expand your tech horizons and join the conversation. Tune into the GeekWire podcast today, a perfect complement to our own discussions here. Don't miss out. Follow the GeekWire podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite listening app. Now back to the episode. You talked a little bit before about mentors, and you touched on it a little bit, but I like asking that question, especially to young people like you, because after the pandemic, there was a real lack of mentorship that was happening for young folks that were not going into the office. It comes up a lot. I like to think about all the people along the way that help us. A lot of people have helped me, and you're just starting really your career. You've already had amazing people in your lives that have helped you. So can you talk a little bit about mentorship and who have touched you throughout the years?
Yeah, no, as in, wouldn't be here today without amazing mentors, my parents and like friends. And so I'm a big fan and sort of a big proponent of the people you surround yourself with, the people that you engage with to have so much influence on your life and what you think is actually possible. Yeah, it isn't like specifics. Like I have definitely sort of my parents, like my parents, sacrificed everything to make sure like I'm here today. I've always sort of supported me in pretty much whatever I wanted to do. I remember that when I finished my PhD, I told him I was thinking of joining this like startup in LA, yada. And I think like obviously as a fresh PhD student out of Oxford, I'm one of the top labs in the world, and I had an offer to work at Meta AI in the generative AI team, getting paid a lot of money. I think a lot of parents might push their child down a certain path, and yet I wanted to do something different. I thought it was like the best for me based on what I wanted to do eventually in my career, and they've always been supportive just like throughout my life. So it's like a sort of like an illustrative example. And then like specific mentors, Maxine Williams, she's been an amazing mentor for me. She's also from Trinidad, currently the global head of diversity at Facebook. But yeah, she's opened up so many doors for me, and sort of like has always been a phone call away. So yeah, really appreciate her and what she's done for me. Obviously, my PhD advisors, my postdocs, my collaborators there, and I had one of the most like amazing PhD experiences, and it wouldn't have been possible without them. So yeah, there's too much people to count. I think like I've been fortunate enough to always be surrounded by just really amazing people, and I hope that continues going forward.
I'm sure it will, but it's true. It takes a lot of people to kind of help us along the way.
Yeah.
When you think about the future and knowing what you know and kind of knowing where we are right now, what do you think about in the next 5 to 10 years that gets you excited? Where do you think this is going? When we talked last, you spoke to me a little bit about personalization. Maybe you can touch on that too, because I think a lot of people right now are caught up in ChatGPT. They're not seeing the next big thing, and I think you are. Will you talk a little bit about what you think about in the horizon?
Yeah, no, I think it's one, the future is very hard to predict. As in, like, we're seeing, I think the rate of change we're seeing right now, stuff that like previously would have been 5 to 10 year horizon, you might see within the next like year or two. And so I think that it's a bit hard to predict 5 to 10 years because the field is moving so quickly. But yeah, I do think that probably one of the biggest things we're going to see is essentially that concept of like always on AI or personal AI. As in a lot of these models are going to get smaller such that it's on device. It's pretty much always on you. I think it's going to become like very ubiquitous. Like Google just said, I think it was like Gemini, like a Gemini model that is going to be running when they're like smartphones. And I think that trend is going to continue. And I think devices are going to get smaller. It's going to get more. It's going to be a lot more connected to us in a very real way. I think with that aspect, as devices pretty much are always on you, as in personalization becomes obviously a big thing there. Where like they have as much data as you could possibly imagine, and I think the level of personalization we're going to see from that is going to be incredible. I think the important thing of moving to on device is I think it's like a lot of privacy concerns with that amount of data, and with a lot of these on device models and not having to sort of run these models on the cloud, I think it's hopefully going to benefit the consumer where your data lives on device and they can accrue those benefits without actually sending that data back to these companies. So yeah, I think that's going to be one interesting shift, is the move to on the edge with a lot of these models. Probably the other thing is, I think coding is going to be interesting in the future. I think a lot, like we've seen some of these incredible stats with like 40-50% of code is being written by GitHub Copilot. And Jacob Patty has talked a lot about sort of LLMs being the next computing interface and sort of, so I do think that like with every new platform shift, every new groundbreaking technology, so you have like GUIs, mobiles, etc. You sort of, the abstraction layers in which people interact with a computer sort of gets even easier and easier. I struggle a little bit though I do think obviously language and English is a very accessible thing, but what we think a lot about is, I don't know if it's accessible, but I don't know if it's fun or if it's the most enjoyable sort of interface for interacting with a computer. Like I think this whole like prompting thing, I think we on our app we have no prompting at all, because we think that like from a mass consumer use case, like people do not want to be writing these paragraphs and prompts to get stuff done. I'm curious how the interface to interact with these LLMs changes over time. I think we're gonna probably move a lot away from prompting, but I'm curious like when like that moves towards like, obviously like there's a lot of stuff around like neural link and like brain waves and sort of like your brain being the, and like your brain signals being the interface for interaction. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting feature on that.
Definitely. The issue of privacy is an interesting one. Google hinted at a lot of the action happening on the device. Apple hasn't announced anything yet, but clearly with the chip that they made, they want all the action to be on device. So I wonder, from a responsibility, a privacy, are you concerned about things in the future in regards to privacy, responsible AI? How do you think about that?
Yeah, we think a lot about like responsibility and safety for sure. So I did, part of my PhD was in interpretability of AI, which is obviously a core piece of the safety responsibility initiative. Yeah, I think a lot of where we focus and spend a lot of time is on the buyer side. Like, how do we make these models and these experiences very inclusive, particularly for people with very diverse skin colors, very diverse gender expressions, and all of those and other forms of diversity. I think we're thinking a lot about how do you get consent from someone, sort of like use their image and a lot of these questions. And yeah, like the goal eventually would be to move a lot of these models to device as well. So to be honest, like on device, I think everyone wins. You don't pay NVIDIA or AWS, because Shiba's data is massive. So yeah, then that is always the goal for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I always end the show with the same question. I'll ask you the question and you can elaborate. But if you were to describe the future of work, the future of AI, in 2 words, what would those 2 words be? And then you can elaborate.
Does it have to be 2 words or could be 1 word?
It could be 1 word.
So I don't know if that's how it's going to end up, but this is like my hope for it is collaborative. I don't love the dystopian future of like everyone's going to have no work and this is like universal basic income. And I think like that dystopian version of the world where like essentially we're sort of slaves to AI. I am not particularly excited about. And so, but I do think AI is this really transformational technology that can make a massive difference to the workplace, at home, in science, education. And so for me, like, my hope is that the future of work and AI and everything is collaborative, where AI and humans are working together to sort of push humanity forward. I'm not a big fan of the future where sort of like we're slaves to AI and all that good stuff.
Well, I hope you're right. I feel the same way, and I'm excited about all those things. And I think that if we can put some guardrails around the bad stuff, we don't have to necessarily stamp down innovation. And so my hope is also, I share your hope. Mandela, it was great to have you on the podcast. Wonderful, wonderful to have you on Shift AI. I've been waiting to talk to you for a long time. And so it's great to have you on here. I appreciate your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the episode being released.
Thanks for tuning in. Such a pleasure to have Mandela Patrick as our guest on today's episode. Mandela brings a unique perspective on how AI can enhance creative expression through mobile apps that transform the way users interact with their camera rolls. If you want to stay connected to Mandela, you can find him on LinkedIn and X. And if you're interested in his insights on creative technology and AI-driven innovation, definitely connect with him and keep up with his posts and activities online. I continue to be amazed by the guests we've had on the show, and I'm excited about the ones joining us in the near future. I truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Shift AI podcast for more exciting interviews and to the Augmented AI Weekly newsletter for updates on how AI can help you scale your business. The Shift AI podcast is syndicated by GeekWire, and we are grateful to have the show sponsored by Augmented AI. Our theme music was created by Dave Angel.